Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another amazing conversation. And today we have the pleasure of having Rolando Aedo, did I pronounce it right?
Yes, you did.
From the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau. I know that we've partnered in many occasions. And for those of you who don't know, the Aventura Visitor Center is ready to launch. So in September, look out because we're bringing the whole visitor center to Aventura. So Rolando, welcome. I know that everybody wants to hear the future of events and what's Miami doing. So please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Gladys. And we're looking forward to partnering with the Aventura Marketing Council, obviously establishing that visitor center up in Aventura. You know, people think that visitor centers are dinosaurs, but they're not, right? They provide an amazing place for people to get information. That's not going away. And I know during the pandemic, we've been trying to stay away from each other. But now that we're getting through this, we want people to come together, come to our community, come to Aventura, and obviously get some great information at the visitor center. So yes, I'm Rolando Aedo. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau. I've been doing this for more than 25 years, practically half my life. It's the privilege. I was raised in Miami-Dade County. I am a product of the product. My family was in hospitality, so I live, I breathe hospitality and travel and tourism. So it's been really difficult what we've gone through this past year and a half, almost 2 years now with the pandemic. You know, Miami has always been one of the top global destinations in the country. You know, we roughly get about 18 million visitors, generating about $25 billion in economic impact in 2019. And of course, the pandemic comes along. And it's ironic because talking about events, we had just, Gladys, if you recall, we had just done the Super Bowl before the pandemic hit.
Correct. It was like a week before or a month before.
Yeah, it was literally weeks before. And at our convention center, we had the media center. And then a few weeks later, the pandemic hit. So it's been very, very challenging. But the good news is that we are on our way to recovery. We are leading the country in recovery. When you look at what's happening at our airport, which is at about 96% of where it was in 2019. Our hotels are actually selling more hotel rooms now than they were prior to the pandemic. We're at about 105% of where they were in 2019. And the room rates are significantly higher. And our restaurants, because we are tracking our restaurants as well and the reservations that they're getting. And our restaurants are doing much, much more business than they did in 2019. So recovery is well underway. That has in itself has created other challenges. And I know we're going to talk about those a little bit later on in the program with workforce and employees. But I am very optimistic with what we're seeing. The Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau launched a variety of recovery programs right when our hotels opened up last summer, June 1. And I think thanks to the collective efforts of many, including those programs, we are now seeing some of those results. So we're very hopeful, we're very optimistic, but we need to work closer than ever to make sure that we continue this momentum.
I'm totally sure. So let me ask you, Miami now is a boom. Everybody wants to come to Miami. The influx of visitors and tourism has restarted, as we can say. And the other part, it became tourism, a vaccination place. Because I'm gonna quote, there was a post the other day saying that the vaccine process in Colombia is doing very well in Miami. And it was like, it's an average of $3,000 of what everybody spent to Miami to come and get the vaccine. So I'm sure that also, it benefits our side of town.
Yeah, you know, it does. And look, ultimately, if you recall initially, when the vaccine first became available, there was a lot of sensitivity that we wanted to make sure that our community was vaccinated, and it was only for our community and for the residents, if you recall. But I think shortly thereafter, especially when we realized that there was plenty of vaccine to go around, this informal vaccination tourism started to grow. And it wasn't something that was being proactively promoted by our office or frankly by anybody, but it was something that was happening. And in fact, anecdotally, I know that airlines added additional routes from some of our key South American countries to accommodate that quote unquote vaccine tourism. Although ironically, our international travel is still a fraction of what it was before the pandemic. But without a doubt, I think we all know people, because we all have friends that came to Miami, got their vaccine, but weren't taking it away from someone else, because thankfully, as we all know now, we have so many vaccine options. So ultimately, whether you live in Miami or you're visiting Miami, we want as many people to become vaccinated, because that is the key for reinstilling traveler confidence, whether you're coming here for vacation or whether you're coming here for one of our marquee events or conventions.
And I forgot to ask you before, but is it true that once you come into the airport, you are asked if you want to get the vaccine at the airport?
Well, I know that our airport is offering vaccine, and
Okay.
exactly when you're being asked, when you're arriving or when you're departing, the great news at our airport, you have that option, which is amazing.
Which I
And
think it's amazing because it protects everybody.
it does. And ultimately, we're such a global destination that, we receive so many people from whether it's South America and eventually Europe. They're coming and going. So if we have the supply of vaccine, the more people, regardless of where you call home, the better, especially for a community like Miami, and especially for our tourism economy.
Yep. So let's go to the events.
Sure.
I've called a few events. I called a few hotels, and their event space is still closed due to the lack of labor in the hospitality industry. And there has been a lot of going back that it's the government stimulus. Some people say no. Are you seeing that there's more people coming in now to the workforce?
So there has been a lot of conversation, a lot of debate on why we're having these workforce issues. But let's take a step back. A year ago, actually in March, if you recall, when our hotels and restaurants in essence shut down, those employees, they needed to, find jobs. They needed to put food on their table. So it is estimated that about 30% of the people that left it, by the way, they didn't leave, they were left, they were laid off necessarily, they had to, they needed to find other employment. So I've heard, and many have heard, that they left the hospitality industry overall, and they became part of the gig economy, Uber driving, Amazon, other major employees. And it is estimated that a lot of those folks will not, aren't returning to the hospitality industry. So you had that to begin with. And then as our hotels were reopening up, and as this demand increased, we know that our federal government, for all the right reasons, was providing significant assistance that was necessary for a period of time. What I've also heard is that, based on the additional federal unemployment benefits, because you have state and then you have federal, when you combine those two together, it did present some of the entry-level hospitality workers with a dilemma, because it was similar compensation using your unemployment benefits. So I've heard that. I think it's very difficult and it's very personal in terms of the decisions people make on whether to return to work or not. But I will tell you that, supply and demand is ultimately what's going to get us to the right place. And I know there's been a lot of conversation about wages and hospitality wages in particular. And I think we've all heard that hotels in particular and restaurants have had to make significant adjustments to attract workers. And that is, everything from signing bonuses, I've heard, increasing the entry wages. Hotels, as I mentioned earlier, are charging rates that they were in 2019. So I think ultimately it's going to be beneficial for not only the hotel operators, but for the owners. But we're in this transition period where demand has not caught up with supply.
Correct. Trying to get the people back in, but be reasonable as well.
Exactly. Now, regarding events, and here's what I within the hotel, you have to your point, event space, ballroom space, and the social catering aspect of hotel business is doing quite well. A lot of those weddings that were postponed.
Like here in Miami, it never stopped.
It never stopped.
No.
But the meetings and the conventions, that part of that business is now just starting to come back. And that is something that we're monitoring closely. And that's a big part of our job, is to bring those meetings and conventions not only into the hotel space, but into our convention center, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a moment.
So the convention center.
Sure.
It's coming back, but first, tell us, Art Basel. Everybody's waiting to hear about Art Basel.
Art Basel is back, baby. And we know how important Art Basel is for Miami-Dade County, for Miami Beach. It's been an amazing event, 20 years now, that it's contributed to the growing arts and culture scene of Miami-Dade County. So it's back. In fact, I just received a note earlier this morning that they are expanding their schedule because they want to offer the same amount of hours to experience Art Basel, but they want to do it in a broader way to give everyone more comfort. So I think Art Basel will be starting one day sooner, which I think we're all excited about that as well. And of course, it's going to be in our amazing convention center, which had just been renovated before the pandemic. So it really hasn't had a chance to kind of fully come into its own. But there is many events. So Art Basel is in December, but we've already hosted a couple of signature events at the Miami Beach Convention Center, including the country's first medical convention about 6 weeks ago, which we were relocated from the Northeast, which hadn't opened yet. And they had a very, very successful convention. And we're looking forward to many more.
In 2 weeks, you have the event industry, the special event, and Cater Source.
We do. We have a pipeline of events, and the convention center is playing a critical role in not just Art Basel and Cater Source, in medical conventions. Sea Trade is happening this fall, which is the #1 trade show for cruise lines, and I know that's an industry that has been decimated and just now started resailing. So, our Miami has always been a global event community, and we've got a lot of great events happening at the convention center, but we've got a lot of massive sporting events. I mentioned Super Bowl earlier. We actually hosted the college football championships in January during the pandemic. Formula One just made a 10-year commitment to come to Miami starting next spring. So that speaks to the strength of the Greater Miami brand, the fact that, we're getting new events, we've opened up new hotels, new restaurants, and new events are coming to our community because there's a lot of optimism in terms of the future and the strength of the Miami brand.
Talk to me a little bit about the cruise industry, because sure. I know that Florida or Miami is the cruise of the port cruise of the world. Like, we're known to be famous for that, and it was hit pretty hard. But now there's a lot of talk about that if you go on a cruise, you need to be vaccinated, and the laws in Florida, and without going into any political back and forth, that we cannot ask for a vaccine. So what's happening there? So
Miami is the cruise capital of the world. It always has been and always will be. All the major cruise lines are headquartered in Miami-Dade County, so their businesses are here. And of course, the Port of Miami is the busiest cruise port in the world, and special recognition to Port Director Juan Carrilla and his team and what they've done there. So you've got all the majors here, and that industry was frankly the last one that restarted. It just happened. last week, and it's been a very tentative process. And yes, initially there was a lot of confusion over the CDC regulations, and then the state of Florida issued and enacted a law that prevented businesses for requiring a vaccine passport to conduct business. So the cruise lines have had to be very flexible, and they have instituted protocols that have allowed them to restart cruising, but still give those passengers traveler confidence. I mean, ultimately, the key is, regardless of what the company or the law says, people need to take personal responsibility, get vaccinated, and that way, you have your peace of mind, and you don't have to worry too much about the person next to you. I mean, we're hoping that they're vaccinated too, but as the science illustrates, is that once you're vaccinated, the likelihood of you being exposed or in danger of any serious illness is minimal. So our cruise lines have adapted their protocols, and they've identified different tracks for those that are vaccinated, those that aren't vaccinated. Those experiences will be a little bit different depending on the cruise line that you're going.
So they're dividing it a little bit.
Yeah, and you know what? There's going to be additional costs, from my understanding, for those that aren't vaccinated. So some people may choose not to get vaccinated for a variety of reasons, and that's their decision. But from my understanding, some of the cruise lines, because they're not vaccinated, they may not be able to fully experience that cruise the same way that the people that are vaccinated, because there might be additional protocols that they may have to go to, and frankly, additional costs. So those are things that cruise passengers need to bear in mind. Read all the details on the cruise lines' websites, but we do need the cruise industry at 100% for us to continue this path of recovery for Miami-Dade County.
How was the first cruise that was like a test that I know that went out recently?
Well, I know that the cruise lines were doing test cruises primarily with their employees to kind of, it's like a soft opening of a hotel, because they haven't cruised in almost a year and a half.
Correct. I imagine the workers are new, and some of them didn't come back and some of them did. Exactly.
But from my understanding, we had some recent revenue sailings with regular passengers. And, unscientifically, no news is good news, and we haven't heard anything that would lead me to believe that what they have put in place is not working. It seems like it is working, and that they've been able to find kind of the middle ground between our state law, their protocols as a business, and ultimately providing those travelers, especially the cruise travelers, which the pent-up demand to travel and to cruise is through the roof. It's not like people that cruise aren't going to want to cruise. No, they've been selling at record levels.
Correct.
And I think that's great news for the future of the cruise industry. And it's a very nimble industry, cruising and hospitality, and it's very resilient. And I think the numbers are demonstrating that clearly.
I'm very happy for that. The other part is, you were talking to me, you mentioned the destination pledge.
Sure.
That you guys implemented a destination pledge. So can you talk a little bit about it?
Absolutely. So early on in this process, we partnered very, very closely with the Hotel Association. Special recognition to their president, Wendy Kalergis. We partnered closely with the Miami Beach Convention Center, and and that team, our airport, obviously our hotels and restaurants. And what we wanted to put together is what we call the Destination Pledge, which means that when you're coming to our community, from the moment you arrive at our airport, when you get into our transportation system, when you go to our hotel, and ultimately our convention center, if you're here for an event at the convention center, we wanted to illustrate and showcase all the protocols and training that had been put in place by all these customer touch points. So, our airport received a special certification from the Airport Industry Council because of the safety protocols and measures that they had in place. Similarly, the Miami Beach Convention Center received certification from GBAC, which is a global advisory group, because of the measures that they had in place. And then on top of that, they also received the MB standard, which was an additional layer of protocols that the city of Miami Beach had put into place. And then we use that information to showcase to not only visitors, but to meeting and event planners, so that they would have the confidence that when they brought their groups here, that this community was doing everything possible to mitigate the risk during COVID. And in addition to that, the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau launched a specific campaign to encourage people to mask up and obviously to vaccinate. So all these things collectively are allowing us to experience the recovery that we're seeing now. And of course, the efforts of a lot of our partners, including, Aventura Marketing Council, all the chambers, it truly, truly has been a collective effort.
What about the hotel? What's going on with the hotel next to the convention?
I'm so glad you asked, because as I mentioned, right before the pandemic, we had completed the renovation of the Miami Beach Convention Center, which was about $625 million. And it wasn't just about the building itself, it was about the campus. And for those of you that know the Miami Beach Convention Center, it had this massive asphalt parking lot in front of it. Now that's a park. And more importantly than just a park, it's also event space. So for example, Design Miami and other events will be actually not only using the inside of the convention center during our Basel, now they have this beautiful park that we could activate other events. In fact, the other event that I want to make sure everyone is aware of is the return of the boat show to the Miami Beach Convention Center, which had left for a couple of years. It was on Key Biscayne, and now it's going back to its original home. So that's big, big news. And they're going to be utilizing this complete convention center campus inside the building, outside the building. And that's one of our unique selling propositions, is that our convention center campus has a lot of open and outdoor spaces that meeting and event planners are looking for more than ever. What they're also looking for is a headquarter hotel, which we don't have yet. But right before the pandemic, we had also, the city of Miami Beach had passed, the voters had passed the construction of an 800-room headquarter hotel immediately south of the convention center, connected to the convention center with a skywalk, which is so important for us as we're out there selling conventions. And having a headquarter hotel next to the convention center, which quite frankly is typically what you would find in most any other convention destination, will now allow us the ability to bring in even more high quality, high impact conventions that will generate a lot of economic impact, not only for the city of Miami Beach, but for Miami-Dade County. So when we met with the development team a few weeks ago, we got an update, and we're hoping that we're going to break ground in the first quarter of 22, and if everything stays on track, then by 2025 we'll have that headquarter hotel, and we will have one of the most amazing convention center packages in the most amazing destination in the U.S., if not the world. So stay tuned.
Yes, because it was much needed.
Definitely.
Convention with a hotel, and then the logistics of the traffic, transportation, the whole thing. So I'm very, very happy that the hotel is going to be built finally. Anything else you want to tell us? You've answered all my questions.
Well, I know we have a few minutes, and I know the focus overall, the hospitality industry is the foundation of everything that represents Miami-Dade County's economy. Everyone, as we like to say, tourism is everybody's business, and everyone, regardless if they work at a hotel or a restaurant, you may work at a tech company, and I want to talk about that a little bit. When Bitcoin was here just a few weeks ago, it was that convention and event relocated from Los Angeles, and we were very proactive in bringing that event to Miami, as we were in bringing that medical convention from the Northeast. And one of the things that we're doing to bring more events and more conventions is also to look at our community's future economic development goals. So there are certain industries, and I think the pandemic has created an opportunity for us all to look at those people that are now considering not only bringing their meeting or the event, but their businesses to Miami. So we are prepared to work much closer with our city and county partners, our economic development partners like the Beacon Council and others, and we're prepared to closely align to use meetings and events as a hook to get companies to relocate, especially within some of those sectors like fintech, legal, insurance. Those are the types of vertical industries that I know are top priorities for economic development. So they are top priorities for us as well. And we're already seeing that. Bitcoin is coming back. You know, they had a record convention in the middle of the pandemic. And I've heard already from my colleagues that they're planning to come back next year, which means they had an amazing experience. And it's something that we're looking forward to. And I know that Mayor Suarez from the city of Miami in particular has become a huge advocate for the tech relocation. And that's one example of that.
Yeah, he has been a huge, and he was talking also about the tunnel, about doing a tunnel and the transportation. Do you know anything about it or nothing yet?
So, you know, the last tunnel, and I think the only tunnel that Miami-Dade County has, as we all know, is to the cruise capital of the world, right? Our port, yeah. That tunnel was done very efficiently. It was a public-private partnership. And I think everyone considers it a success in terms of how it was built on time, on budget, et cetera. You know, there's been a lot of talk about a Brickell tunnel. Downtown Miami has become an amazing place to not just work, but to live and to play. Museums, restaurants, and I actually, our offices are on Brickell, and I can stare down on that Brickell Bridge. And when that Brickell Bridge goes up, definitely it creates a backlog throughout the core of our downtown. So I know there have been discussions about tunnels for so many years. And I think there's more recent discussions about, you know, Elon Musk and his boring company. I know they've done some tunnels in Vegas, and they've got something in LA. And mobility and transportation is critical for our long-term success, not only as residents like you and me and a lot of your audience, but for the visitors as well. If we make this community better for our residents, we make it better for our visitors. It's really that simple. So that's why we're strong supporters and want to be part of building a better community, and not just for tourism, but for residents, and balancing quality of life with a successful tourism economy.
Have you seen now through the airports that the business travel is coming back? Or it's just the tourism, the leisure travel?
Yeah. So we are seeing the leads coming back, right? So there is, we meet with hotels quite often. There are small groups of business meetings happening, especially what they call incentive travel, where businesses are rewarding some of their top performers. And we've always had that business. So that's the first wave of our business travel that's coming back. And it's happening already in a fairly small way within our hotels. But what I've heard also, which is very encouraging, is the amount of leads that our hotels are receiving for future larger business meetings within their hotels, and of course within our convention center. So it started a few months ago, and now all of a sudden it's taken off dramatically. So we are very encouraged by what we will see, not only in the fall, but especially in 22, which we anticipate will be a record year for meetings and conventions, because remember, a lot of people didn't cancel their meetings, they postponed them. And we're gonna see that backlog of business in 22. So we're very encouraged by what we're seeing on the books.
Rolando, I really appreciate all the updates. Continue doing an amazing work. Thank you so much. And I know that we look forward to the next phase of recovery and the boom in Miami.
Well, and we look forward to our partnership, Gladys. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to joining you again soon.
Thank you. And everybody, thank you so much. And above all, stay safe. Have a good week.